I'm going to be canning some salsa today, and I wanted to show you how I do that. So something that makes the way that I do this a little bit differently is I cook it in a roaster. So I have an 18-quart roaster right here. And then the other thing is I only cut up my tomatoes by hand. The rest I use my Vitamix, so I can get through this process really quickly because I'm not sitting and chopping up a lot of vegetables. So I'll show you my step-by-step process and how I can my salsa. The reason I like to use a roaster to cook my salsa is that it frees up my time. I don't have to sit by a stove all day and be stirring a pot. I just throw everything in my roaster, and if I want to can it later that day, like in a few hours, I'll crank up my heat all the way to the highest setting. But if I want to throw everything in the roaster before bed and cook it really slow, then I can can it in the morning. So cooking my salsa in the roaster just frees up my time and gives me a lot of flexibility. The first step to making salsa is you're going to need some tomatoes and you're going to want to blanch them. And so I'm going to start on that in just a minute, but I wanted to share with you my favorite kind of tomato that I use. I use Hungarian heart tomatoes, and they are a paste tomato. They're super meaty and they just make making salsa a lot faster. So the first step is going to be to go ahead and get these blanched.
To blanch tomatoes, all you need to do is bring a large pot of water to a boil and then drop your tomatoes in. You leave them in there for about 30 seconds to a minute. You'll notice the skin will start to peel back, and then you go ahead and remove them into some cold water. And after they've chilled for a few minutes, you can peel the skins off nice and easily. While I'm removing the skins, I also like to remove as many of the seeds as possible. This helps to reduce the amount of liquid I am adding to my salsa, and it will help me to be able to cook my salsa a whole lot faster.
So I've taken the skins off, I've taken the seeds out of my tomatoes, and I've cored them, and now I'm using my Vitamix to chop them up into nice small pieces. After I have them chopped up, I always pour them into a measuring cup. And as soon as, this is an 8-cup measuring cup, and as soon as I have that full, I dump that into my roaster. And I like to just keep track of how many cups of tomatoes I have, because then everything else that I add to my salsa will depend on how many cups of tomatoes. So just keep track of that. Next up, I have gotten my green and red peppers. You can use whatever you have on hand. Some of my peppers turned red this year, so I'm going to be using those. I remove the seeds, and now I'm gonna just blend them up. Next up is onions. I've taken the skins off and I've just kind of roughly chopped them, and now I'm gonna go ahead and blend those up. Next up is my garlic, and because there's only a tiny bit of garlic, I find it easier to mix my garlic in with some of my onions, so I always save a bit of my onions so I can mix them together. They just blend better that way. Next up is the hot peppers, and a good reminder is always to wear gloves so you don't get anything in your eyes. And if you want less spicy, then go ahead and take out the seeds, but if you like it a little more zesty, leave the seeds in. So I've left the seeds in. You can use any kind of hot peppers that you have on hand. This is a variety that I had in my garden that were ready to go. So whatever kind of peppers you enjoy best is what you can use. Next up, I'm going to add my vinegar. And then I'll add all of my spices. I ended up needing 2 roasters because I had too many tomatoes to all fit in one. So I'm going to add oregano to both of these. And then some cumin. And then chili powder. And then salt. Alright, now I'm going to just give everything a really good mix, and then I will turn on my roasters and let them cook away. Something to mention is if you don't have a roaster, you can still do all of this and just do it on a pot and a stove. And if you don't have a Vitamix, you can also just hand chop everything. So just because this is how I did it, you can do what works best for you. But this, I just love doing it this way because it saves me a ton of time and I don't have to sit in front of a stove and babysit anything. So I really enjoy cooking my stuff in the roasters. All right, now that my salsa is all done cooking, I'm going to be adding some tomato paste. I'm going to be using some organic tomato paste. If you want to skip this step, you can. You don't need to add the tomato paste, but I like my salsa not to be super runny. And so if you don't want to use the tomato paste, you can always just cook down your salsa even more. So do what you want here. I do add the tomato paste because, like I said, I don't want it to be super runny. I like it just a nice consistency. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And then I'm going to take a whisk and just work that into the salsa. Tomato paste is all mixed in, and now I'm just going to be filling my jars. You want to leave an inch head space. My jars are all filled, so now I'm going to take a wet cloth and I'm going to wipe down the rims of my jars. You want to make sure that the rims are nice and clean so that your jars seal properly. The next step is to put your lids on top of the jars. And now I'm going to go ahead and put all of my bands on my jars. My jars are all set, and so now it's time to can these. These are going to go in a hot water bath for 15 minutes. So normally I would use my hot water bath canner when I'm going to be doing this, but since I have so many jars, I have 37 pint jars today, I'm going to use my pressure canner, but I'm going to use it as a hot water bath because I can double stack my jars in here. This is really tall. It's a 32 quart pressure canner. So I've put my insert on the bottom. I'm going to fill up the canner and then I'm going to set this on top of the jars. I can put more jars on top and still get the water at least an inch over the top of the jar, so I'm able to do a hot water bath this way. All right, I'm just finishing loading my last canner. I was able to do 2 canners worth. Each level of the canners holds 8 jars, so I could do 16 jars in each canner. So the benefits of having tall canners like this is I don't have to hot water bath. This would each be 4 individual times hot water bathing, so I save a ton of time this way. Now that my canners are loaded and I make sure I have at least an inch over the tops of my jars, I'm going to go ahead and get these covered up. If you don't have a lid like this, you can still use your canning top, but I just keep it up like this so the air can still escape and it's not a tight seal. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my stove on, and as soon as this comes up to a boil, I'm going to keep it at a gentle boil for 15 minutes. My timer just went off, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my stove off, and then I'm going to take my covers off. I'm going to let the canners cool off for 5 minutes, and then I will take my jars out. All right, now it's just time to remove my jars from my canner, and I'm going to set them onto a towel so that they don't ruin my countertops. And then you're going to want to leave these sitting on the counter without touching them for at least 12 hours. After 12 hours, then you can go ahead and take the bands off and make sure that everything has sealed.
I hope you found this video helpful. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching.